the only person who will show up is the people who, have a negative stake in that role or bill or whatever it is. So that's why advocating in general is important because, things might seem small, things might seem big, but if you never take action against whatever it is that affects you, you won't get the result you want, essentially.
Welcome to the It Matters podcast. I'm your host, Walter Perez, and let's dive in as we help you grow your mindset and elevate your leadership. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the It Matters podcast. I am excited and grateful that you're joining me on another episode. This podcast is all about having conversations that will make you better as a leader. And today is no different. I'm actually really pumped because this episode is being released about 2 days before Rare Disease Day. And many of you know that I am passionate and I'm an advocate when it comes to that because we have a son that has a rare disease. And we've been doing a lot of work with not only PFIC, but with the rare disease world. And today, I have a couple of special guests, a couple of young men who are doing just that. Their name is Viraj and Khartik, and they run an organization called Rare Gen. And I'm excited to dive in because my conversation with them really went in deep on how they started their organization, their advocacy work. What does it look like to be young leaders? What their vision and mission is all about? How they plan to become, a louder and stronger voice in the rare disease world and for their own rare disease that they represent. And so there's so much here to unpack. But one thing I do know is that these guys are leaders and they're leading the way, and I'm pumped and excited for you to hear this conversation because I think you're going to learn a couple of things and you're going to realize that it doesn't matter how old you are, you can make an impact in the world. And so I hope that on this Rare Disease Day or Rare Disease Week that you're going to be impacted and you're going to realize whether it affects you or not, that you can be an advocate as well. And so join me as we get into it and we unpack this conversation. Enjoy. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to the It Matters podcast. I have a couple of special guests with me today, and they represent Rare Gen. And it's a nonprofit organization that is advocating for a lot, and we're going to get into that. But my guest today is Viraj and Khartik, and I'm excited for all of you listeners to get to know them because they have a cool story and just they're doing some great work. And so with rare disease around the corner, I wanted to make sure that I highlighted these guys so all of you could be not only aware, but support them. So gentlemen, welcome to the It Matters podcast and thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
100%. You know what? I met you guys, maybe a year ago at a conference?
Yeah, I think 2 years ago.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And you guys have been doing some good work. And I knew that when I met you guys, I knew that at some point I wanted to have you on this podcast because I love highlighting, what other people are doing. But you guys are doing some special work. And with the work that I've been doing with the PFIC network, and then with what you guys are doing, I wanted to make sure that, my audience got to know you a little bit. So why don't you guys tell us a little bit about what you're up to right now and who you are?
Yeah, so I'm Khartik. I'm the co-founder and president of Rare Gen. So right now we're focused more so on a plethora of rare diseases. So, Viraj has PFIC, I have lymphedema, both are rare diseases. So instead of focusing on one specific rare disease, we thought that since a lot of the experiences are very similar between, youth who have all these diseases, if we united as one, continuous movement on a specific cause of advancing rare disease policy in general, that we can make a stronger impact and also encourage people who don't have rare diseases to get involved because, one of the main challenges with rare diseases compared to other health inequities, for example, or inequities in general is that people with rare diseases make up a very small percentage of the population. So naturally, getting support from others is also a really important way to further our cause. So that's kind of where we come in. We bridge, the rare disease community and also the non-rare disease community to unite as one and take progress on this.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So maybe for the listeners that are not really kind of familiar with the rare disease world or with what you guys represent, like your rare diseases, do you mind telling us a little bit about your rare disease?
Yeah, of course. I think I'll go first. So I have PFIC, and I actually have the fourth subtype of PFIC, and I was diagnosed around 6 months, and we actually came to the U.S. for treatment. And for those that aren't aware with the rare disease community, my specific disease is extremely rare. If I remember, it's like 1 in 1 million, or maybe 1 to 10 million people are diagnosed every year, and it's extremely difficult to find treatments. It's extremely difficult to find specific therapies that work for your disease. But I think if you have a community like PFIC Network does, it's really, really beneficial to have those people to help you along that journey. And that's my specific disease, but Karthik can talk about his disease and his journey as well.
Yeah, so mine progression was a little bit different. Instead of at birth, my disease came into play around COVID. So when I was like 12, 13 years old, and
Okay.
just happened to come out of nowhere, which was like a big shock. So unlike PFIC, which is usually somewhat diagnosable, my disease was misdiagnosed multiple times. Like at some point, they thought it was a tumor. So even today, they don't know what caused it. So mine's is lymphedema, but within lymphedema, it's a form of lymphedema that's genetic. So most lymphedemas are like they're caused by after effects of surgery. Like a lot of people have breast cancer when they get surgery, they get lymphedema as well. But mine is
Right.
inherited, it's genetic, so they don't really have much info because it's very, very rare, and they don't even know what specific gene caused it. But on like PFIC, it's a little bit less detrimental to my quality of life. But still, during the initial phases, it's very daunting to deal with it. There's a lot of extra procedures, etc., that you have to go through, physical therapy.
Wow, that's amazing. I know. I mean, from my experience, both of you know that I have a young son, right, that has PFIC as
Yeah,
well, PFIC, and so I can only imagine. I mean, it's amazing to talk to two gentlemen that are experiencing from the other side, right? Because I'm only seeing it from a parent perspective, and so you guys are amazing, man. In my eyes, hear me out. I know you guys are superheroes to me sometimes because the things that you've gone through and you continue to break through is amazing.
thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious because you guys are friends. How did you guys meet?
Yeah, so we actually go to the same school, same high school. I think we first met in a computer science class. So in ninth grade, I was the only ninth grader in the class. And it was filled with a bunch of like 11th graders, 10th graders, everyone. So, one day I met Viraj in the class, and then we just went from there. We realized we were interested in medicine, healthcare, science, biology. So we were like, what's the natural next step? We can probably do a simple project on Viraj's disease because he was working with the professor at the time. So from there, it moved on to just being interested in science fair, to being interested in PFIC, to presenting research on PFIC, to getting involved with the PFIC network. And then from there, we turned it into Viraj.
That's amazing. So both of you guys are in school right now, or are you
Yeah.
done?
Yeah, yeah.
What are you guys working on?
Well, I'm a senior, and we're basically second semester, so a lot of us, we don't, the workload is a bit less, but we're doing like the same original classes. And I think one thing I could say is actually this upcoming week we're gonna go to Capitol Hill, at least for me. And I actually have a couple of senators I can meet and speak about rare diseases to them, so that's exciting. But Karthik, you can talk about what you're doing as a junior. He's a grade below me, so.
Yeah. So I'm a junior currently, second semester, which is like the busiest part of high school. So I'm following along with the whole advocacy, Viraj and portion of my work, but I'm also doing a lot of science fair related stuff this year. So for example, my project this year is on taking like the way the brain functions, it's called plasticity, and applying it to AI models so that they're like more biologically accurate.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. Um, okay, so like I chat with you guys. I've met you guys in person. Um, you wouldn't really know that you have a rare disease, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so,
Yeah.
and the interesting part about this is, I mean, it probably for you guys being mindful of the limitations, if there is any, or how it affects your life. It'd probably be more from your perspective. So, how has it been? Whether in your age group right now or when you were a little younger, like being somebody that has to walk through with a rare disease.
You want to? I can answer first.
Yeah, you can answer it.
So I had it since birth, so I've experienced it basically my whole life. And to give it to you simply, it really doesn't affect on the outside, but on the inside. When you're at home, when you're sleeping, it's extremely difficult to sleep. At least for me, because I have a lot of itching problems. So nothing is really expressed on the outside, but there's a lot of doctor's visits. I have to get my blood drawn very frequently. I had to go through all sorts of different therapies and test and see which one was effective. And it's a lot of also emotional toll at home. Um, but that was my personal experience growing up with it. The interesting thing is, though, I was able to do pretty much any activity like any normal kid. So I'm actually really grateful that it didn't affect that part of my life. I was able to do essentially what any normal kid could do. And that's pretty much, I guess, my experience with it. I don't know. Karthik had it later on in his life, so
Before we go to Kartik, like Viraj, so I know itchiness, pruritus being one of the main symptoms of PFIC. Does that affect you today? Like, has that affected like your studies and your schooling and all that?
so it pretty much affects just when I sleep at night, and then
Okay.
sometimes I'll through the day I'll be itching, but in the night it's excessive itching, and it's somewhat still affects me today, but not as much as it used to in the past. If
Mm.
any, if I itch at all, like during this year, like if I itch at all today, majority of it is just, I guess, sort of a habit. Like the actual the reason for the pruritus is not the same, because when I was smaller it was actually because how bile acids build up underneath the skin. That was what caused the itching, but now it's more just like a habit that I itch that I'm not able to get rid of. But yeah, that's the
Uh,
main thing about itching for me.
right. There's a lot of like memory in that and just the habit that you created when you were young, hey?
Yeah.
Wow. Thanks for sharing. What about you, Kartik?
Yeah, so mine's was a bit a bit more shocking because it went from, not having a rare disease till you're 12, 13, then like during the middle of like a global pandemic, it just comes out of nowhere. So
Wow.
for me, the main effects were like physical, so I have to stay on top of my physical health, like first and foremost, just so that like I can manage the symptoms, everything. So initially it was like very tough to manage. You have to wear like almost like a brace, like how people wear braces after surgery, pretty much, for like a couple months to a year. Usually it lasts like almost till the end of your lifetime, but for me, luckily, I didn't have to stay in that stage past like a year or so. So after that, it's mostly managing your physical health, and then also like you have to be mindful of like the physical strain you're putting on your body. For example, like when you're working out or doing simple tasks, or just walking a lot, walking upstairs, etc., etc. You have to uh, be mindful of how much you're doing those things if you're like staying safe and whatnot, so you don't accidentally like break a bone or something like that. And then another thing is like you have to try not to get too many cuts or all, because if you have lymphedema, you can be more susceptible to like that infection or whatever it is spreading through your like.
Mm. Wow. So it seems to me like, I mean, both of you you have to live a very purposeful life, whether that's, reactive, proactive, like
Yeah,
you obviously got to be careful and because of what you're dealing with. But so then it makes me think here, both of you kind of come together. I'd love to know, you guys start this nonprofit. both of you guys are co-founders, right? Rare
Yeah.
Gen. Okay, so first of all, how did that come about? Because that's for a couple of guys your age, like that's pretty awesome what you've accomplished with that. But what kind of initiated that?
So originally it all started from PFIC Network, actually, from the PFIC Network conference. So I realized that, like PFIC Network, each different disease has a similar type of support group led by patients, like for a lot of the rare diseases. Not all of them have it, but like quite a good amount do. So I was
Mm,
like, instead of having, like a PFIC network or an LERN network for lymphedema that focuses on that one disease, that helps the patients a lot, like for what they're specifically dealing with. But for like policy issues and for like structural issues, for like healthcare issues, if there's one organization that took care of all of that, then that would be a little bit more interesting for us to take part in, but also be more interesting for like the youth to take part in. Because
right.
the big part about rare diseases is that, like the patient's quality of life is one challenge that's the immediate challenge they have to face, which like PFIC network and all they deal with that really well. But then the other hurdle is getting like long-term like systematic change, like changing the healthcare system, policy, bills, legislation, everything. So if you have one kind of group that's advocating for the same set of policies or same set of changes in healthcare, it's easier to get changes done that way.
That's awesome. Wow, that's pretty cool. So you guys just chatted about it after the PFIC network conference,
Yeah.
and Viraj, you were just on board when you heard this big vision.
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. I thought it
That's
was
cool.
amazing. So, and
Well, it is amazing, and I mean, and that's there's a lot of work to do behind the scenes when it comes to putting an organization together. Um, so maybe tell us a little bit like what's the mission behind Rare Gen?
So the
mm,
mission is pretty simple. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create policy level changes as well as just a general movement to advocate for the needs of rare diseases as like a whole, like as a group. So what we want to do is instead of focusing on one specific disease, we want to focus on all of them and create changes that affect all of the diseases generally. So it's like a larger front for what people face. So instead of focusing on, like their immediate challenges in healthcare, we want to focus on creating solutions to like the bigger barriers that exist. For example, like we actually went to Maryland last week to meet with some state delegates, state senators as well. There's a testimony, so it was on insurance, right, which is like a big topic nowadays. So like
Mm,
a big challenge that rare disease patients across the board face is like, there's biosimilars and then generic drugs. So these drugs are like really important to rare disease patients because they're number one, they're more cost effective, but also they're not there's a lot of these drugs that don't have like a mainstream version, so they're not branded, but they're really useful. So because these are not recognized by the FDA, there's a lot of challenges in getting insurance to cover them. So what we did is we went there and we advocated and we were like, we need these biosimilars and generic drugs to get on the list that the FDA approves, because there's like hundreds of people in Maryland, in your constituency, for example, who are facing the challenge of not being able to afford these drugs and these biosimilars. So that's like one way we advocate. So we look at the issues that are pressing the rare disease community, like the larger scope issues, and we find ways to advocate them through like legislation or through activism or policy or workshops, whatever we can do to advocate for them.
that's so good. I love that you guys have formed something that basically you got power in numbers, right?
Yeah.
And to be
mm,
able to increase to make that voice louder and to have more voices into this, especially the deeper you get into rare disease, you realize that some of these issues on a policy level, government level, you just need more numbers to be able to make an impact, right? And so I love how you guys have had that vision to be able to bring uh, all rare diseases across the board together. Um, which I'm curious. So, when you read your website, I mean, and chatting with you guys before, you guys are trying to represent like young
Yeah.
leaders.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah. So I'm just kind of wondering, like, how important do you think it is to give a voice to young leaders? Because um, we do live in a culture sometimes where um, young leaders don't get heard, and they have so much to say and so much impact. So I wanted to unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, so personally, I think giving the voice to young leaders is one of the most important, if not the most important thing in the policy space, as well as just in general. I think one story that comes to mind immediately is, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, Walter, but one of our people at PFIC Network, she's in Canada. I forgot her name, but I think her name is Caroline. She actually told me a story where she was diagnosed when she was diagnosed with PFIC and she had a lot of itching. Her bile results were actually completely normal, but the doctor, in fact, said that she had no itching whatsoever. So what actually ended up happening is she wasn't able to get any prescription or she wasn't able to get any treatment from that. But that's actually extremely harmful because the doctor is saying, "Hey, there's no itching based on these results we have," and he didn't actually ask the patient. Since a lot of youth are actually suffering with these diseases, it's very important that we get them at the table to tell them about their symptoms, about what they're experiencing, so that doctors can work with that information. And insurance companies and treatment companies can also take that data and say, "Hey, these people need these sorts of treatments." And
Mm.
a lot of the time, that doesn't come through the parents or other adult advocates. A lot of the time, that only can come through the youth advocates. And so personally for me, I think when I think about if the youth need to speak up, I think it's a certain yes, they 100% need to speak up. And that's what we're trying to inspire here at RareGen.
That's so awesome. Yeah, I think who you were speaking about is Cadence. I think no from.
Cadence, sorry,
Uh,
Cadence. Yeah.
no, it's all
Cadence.
good. No, for sure. No, that's awesome. And that's the thing, especially when it comes to PFIC, for example. It's been known to be such an infant, young, affecting kids, right? And kids don't have the voice, but now we're entering into an era where individuals like you guys are getting older, and wait, you can speak up and you can speak from your perspective and have a voice. Uh, from a parent perspective, I can advocate, but I only have one part of the story, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Then on top of that, in like this age, so we actually went to the UN, for example, like in Summit of the Future in New York. And one of the things they stressed to us, like throughout all the like speeches, lectures, side sessions, was that, in this age, like in this era, digital tools especially make it really easy for leaders who are like unable to go to places physically, for example, or have a lot of time constraints and can't work full time on their mission, to take advantage of these digital tools to become more effective leaders and achieve more without spending more time. So it's more efficient essentially nowadays.
Isn't that such a good point? Hey, times have changed. You're right, and now we can use this world of media and everything else that has evolved to actually serve a good purpose, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you guys are doing advocacy work on a rare gen level, inviting young people to be part of that. Um, in your guys' opinion, like, why is it important to advocate? Like, I mean, we're talking about uh, any age at this point, and why have you guys realized that it's important to be advocating, and what's kind of the message behind that?
So like I think the simplest example to really visualize it is that like when we went to the hearing for the bill in Maryland last week, there was like what 6 or 8 bills getting passed within the same session. But if you noticed, there was only 2 bills that had people show up. There was like 10 people like cramming and speak for those bills. But then for the other 6, which still affect everyone, but weren't at the top of the priority list for most people, those
Mm.
bills, there was only one person who showed up, and that one person was the lobbyist for the insurance companies who showed up. So, even though those affect
Wow.
everyone, if no one really thinks, oh, I have to be the one to change it, or oh, this affects me directly, or how do I get involved? The only person who will show up is the people who, have a negative stake in that role or bill or whatever it is. So that's why advocating in general is important, because, things might seem small, things might seem big, but if you never take action against whatever it is that affects you, like you won't get the result you want, essentially.
Oh man, that's such an interesting thing what you just shared there. Like there could be an illusion created that there's people advocating, but you're right, they're getting up there because it's going to affect them negatively.
Exactly.
But we need more people to advocate for the positive aspect of it and how this is going to improve everybody's lives.
Exactly.
That's very insightful. Hmm. You know what I love? I mean, maybe you've heard this quote in the leadership world or whatever. You know, they say that uh, maybe you guys have been encouraged at some point in your life where they say, "Hey, you guys are tomorrow's leaders,"
Yeah.
and it's meant well, and I get that. But in talking with you and knowing you a little bit, like no, like you guys are today's leaders, and if
Mm.
you waited
Yeah.
until tomorrow, you would be, you know, you'd be missing out on the type of impact that you could have on the world, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I actually like that twist on the quote there.
Cool. Well, no, and I believe that 100%, man. That's why I mean I believe in what you guys are doing, and I appreciate that you guys have taken the initiative because you know, being in the leadership world and all that, like I believe everybody's a leader. I think what happens is that some of us are behind in developing it or stepping into it and growing, right? And
Yeah.
so you guys are a great example of like, okay, you see a need, you see the gap, and you see that there's opportunity here. And I mean, I love that you guys have eliminated excuses and I mean, everybody has, you know, a busy life and reasons, but you guys didn't wait to finish school. You said, okay,
Yeah.
we'll take this on and we'll figure it out, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
there's a good advantage that comes with, advocating in times where people don't necessarily think you'd advocate. So I think that, as like a leader who's like a younger leader, like youth, remember the youth, if there's either like two responses, so usually it'll either be like really negative or it will be positive, because in these conversations where like only the insurance representative is showing up, if there's a youth, if there's like someone from the youth, it's either showing us being positive because you bring the youth voice to the table, which these legislators, for example, or policymakers, whatever position they might have, when are making these decisions, they don't really get that perspective. But then on the other hand, there's people who are a little bit more traditional thinking who don't like the youth's voice because, they prefer like more thought out like analysis with like numbers, facts, uh, months of research from like 10-person team on like XYZ bill, for example. Yeah. So there's like benefits and there's also like downsides that come to being a leader, but knowing how to manage that's what makes youth leaders effective, especially in today's world where there's a lot of resources and opportunities to figure out how you can make a difference.
100%. And I think something that you guys kind of grabbed onto right away is that you knew you had to build a team and you had to
Yeah.
attract and get people, you know, to make this a movement, as the word you used earlier on. What have you guys learned about, you know, the importance of being working together, being collaborative, maybe to throw another word in there to have a community? Like yeah, what have you guys learned through that?
Yeah, I think one thing that we've learned is we're definitely able to come together and share, our individual experiences and then leverage that to push advocacy forward. One thing is that when we collaborate, we can also inspire many others. If it was just like it was, for example, if it was just me advocating, I might not be able to inspire other advocates. But when you see multiple, youth advocating, then you're like, hey, multiple youth that can advocate, so can I, and that pushes change forward, that inspires those same advocates that we want to see on those platforms to share their story and be in places where, whether it's advocating for a bill or whether it's speaking to doctors, be in those critical places. So I
Mm.
think coming together as a team was very crucial in helping them raise their voice, and also in allowing us to, like I said before, allowing us to come like share our own experiences together and sort of mold those.
Yeah, I think that like, on top of that, like one of the more materialized types of effects we see from having a large team is that there's a lot of issues that affect everyone, but like as one person, there's only so much that you can know about like all the issues that face the rare disease community. So the more people you have that have more diverse experiences, you can figure out like, oh, this issue directly relates to rare diseases, but it's not that obvious at the surface level. So because we
Right.
have that person on our team, we know to address it now. So like, the more and more our team has been expanding, the more and more diverse the issues we are that we tackle, because the more and more issues we know about that relate to rare diseases. So like initially it was just focused on healthcare reforms or insurance reforms or like research reforms, but now we also tackle like the environment, for example, and then like female inequities related to like gender disparities, because the more and more people we got, we realized those issues tie into rare diseases. So when people talk about those, we go and we talk about how they relate to rare diseases and how we can further our movement's agenda in relating those issues to ours, for example. So like we went to
Mhm.
Bangkok during the late summer, like during September, the beginning of September. And in
Yeah.
Bangkok, there's a forum for like, it was a business rights conference for like all of the business leaders in Asia. So like Unilever was there, Amazon was there. There's a lot of big business players. But then we went in the room, and then people are confused. They're like, how does what we're doing relate to rare diseases? And we're like, so businesses have an impact on rare diseases too, right? Like the commercialization of these rare disease medicines, for example, or even like, when businesses set up in like very rural areas, there's people with rare diseases and disabilities that might be adversely affected by like the pollutants or the chemicals that their factories emit, right? So these all are tied into rare diseases, but we wouldn't have known about it if we hadn't expanded our team earlier on.
That's wild. That's
Yeah,
such a good point, right? I mean, you think about I'm of the opinion of too that there's an advocate in every single person.
yeah,
And maybe it doesn't affect them directly, or they're not aware of, or they haven't really paid attention to what's out there. But we all have the power to advocate and make the world a better place, and especially in the rare disease world. Even as simple as like our influence, right? We might know somebody that could actually
exactly.
not only have the tools, the resources, money potentially, the connections. Like you just never know, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the benefit of always expanding your team. Like my philosophy kind of when I start recruiting people or start looking for people to join the team is, even if I don't have a good impression of them necessarily like from the first talk, I'll give them a chance to see how they fit onto our team. And then if they don't have the drive at that time or like the want to advocate, then maybe it's time to let them go. But giving them that initial chance always helps, because there's a lot of times where you just meet one person you never thought you'd meet, but then later on they start to become like an integral part of your team. So we've had even directors who we initially didn't think we would want to join the team.
Right. Yeah, yeah. That's definitely one thing that I've learned about building organizations is that people are humans, right? And
Yeah,
also people work in seasons. And so I don't know if anything really happens by accident. Like somebody might not be as active in your organization today, but now they know about you. And sometimes things come full circle. Maybe they
exactly.
weren't ready. I mean, life happens, right? And
Exactly.
um, it just you can never go wrong in learning how to connect with people, communicate with them, and then just learn to work together, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely like number one policy when it comes to how we operate. Pretty much we take a chance with everyone, allow them to contribute. Yeah.
Is is your board, I mean, I know you would have to put a board together for your organization. So have you guys, I know you guys have been pretty good at connecting with doctors and different people from other organizations, but have you then stepped outside of the young age when it comes to your board and some of the, getting some other connections?
Yeah, so like naturally we've been involved in research on top of, advocacy. So there's a lot of people we've met along the way who work at like universities or with ARPA H, for example. So there's a lot of overlap, and we found members who are interested in joining our board. So especially like recently, where we started establishing stronger connections with these people, we've had like over 6 months of direct communication with them.
Yeah.
They're ready to join our board, and we're in the process of onboarding these people, um, giving them a more solid idea of what getting a more solid idea of what they'd want to contribute, and then also like where they fit into advancing our mission, for example. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of scientists, people involved in like legislation, like state senators, for example, not them directly, but like ex-state senators, for example, or people who are involved in that field within political field, people involved in the media, for example, who can amplify our message. There's people everywhere essentially who we've been able to network out to get them involved with the region. And they're on the like getting ready to join our board. Some of them.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome. Hey, on that note, I'm kind of wondering, obviously there's probably some challenges that come in when you're trying to put an organization together. Both of you probably did not have experience in the nonprofit world before, right? You had never started your own organizations before. So I'm wondering, like, what kind of challenges have you guys faced in navigating an organization like RareGen?
Yeah, I think the first challenge was the legality issue. I think for months we were trying to figure out how to get that, the 501(c)(3) status so we could get in funding. Um, but we eventually figured it out, so that's good. But that was the main first challenge that we had. And if there's any other challenges, I think the first one that comes to my mind is getting actual youth advocates to join, and also like saying that this is a good opportunity. That was a little bit of a challenge because new things aren't something that everyone would want to immediately go and join. Um, but we were able to get a good team, and then we were able to sort of reach out to many other advocates across the country, and then even across internationally as well, which was pretty interesting. But those are the two main challenges that came to my mind. I'm not sure if Karthik has any other challenges that I missed.
Yeah, so initially, like, I think this, like, this works with nonprofits, businesses in general. Like, any organization in the beginning, there's always some initial cost to getting it bootstrapped, right, from the ground up. So for us, that was mainly like, the legal fees for establishing a 501(c)(3), commissioning a website, like a web developer. But one of the biggest challenges, like, initially, was taking the leap and going to the UN, especially when our track record was like more limited than it is today. So
Right.
it was a good opportunity. We actually met someone who works there who took us and allowed us to speak, gave us good speaking opportunities to spread our
Wow.
message. But, there's like travel expenses, thousands of dollars for planes to go to Bangkok. We went to New York, then Bangkok. So it was like a long 1.5 week trip. So, just traveling, hotel fees, it was really high, right? So taking that chance and going and getting the initial connections, which stayed to us till this day, was it was a really core, pivotal decision in growing Viraj, but it was also like one of the initial challenges in getting Viraj to that next level from what we already had so far.
Mm. Wow. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, and I mean, and you guys have been able to navigate through all that pretty nicely, but yeah, no, those are definitely very real challenges. I'm kind of curious, like you guys obviously want to invite younger leaders, um, and maybe you haven't thought of this, but I thought I'd kind of throw it out there. Um, as you guys get older, uh, do you see Rare Gin kind of adjusting a little bit or adding to what you guys are doing, or are you hoping to just stay focused on inviting young leaders to advocate, or what are you guys thinking?
So, it's actually something we're thinking about recently. So, for us, we want everyone on leadership to be under 24. So that's like our strict cutoff. So what we'll do is, if when we reach that point that we wouldn't be within that youth sort of demographic under 24 or 24, we'd want to switch to more of an advisory role where we're on the board for Virgin, and then let someone else lead it as their president, vice president, whatever it is. So that's also why establishing a strong board now is like crucial for, in 8 years or so, when we have to eventually pass it down to someone else who will be confident and who can run the organization. But then also, I think this is a challenge that's really unique to nonprofits as opposed to like other types of businesses, especially nonprofits who are focused on the youth, because after a certain point in time, you either become really advanced in your career to a point where, advocating takes up a lot of time and it's really difficult to do for the average person, or you just grow out of, this certain priority. Like instead of focusing on rare diseases, you find some other mission that captivates you a lot, and splitting time between both might not work out. But then, like, for youth organizations, the unique challenges like maintaining a way to make it youth led. So there's a lot of other rare disease organizations, but what we like pride ourselves in mostly is that all of our leadership, they're like entirely members of the youth. There's no one older than 24 like in any of our leadership. So we want it to stay like that so it maintains like the same course for the future.
That's so cool. How old are you guys, by the way?
So I'm 16, and then Viraj is, how old are you?
I just turned 18 in December, so I can officially say I'm an adult now.
Oh man, that's awesome! Like, wow, like you guys are pretty big rock stars, man. Like, you guys could be doing a lot of other things, and I mean, and I get it. You guys have been carrying this burden of your own rare disease, and you know how it affects you. But I just got to tell you, I have mad respect in how you guys. Not only do you want to advocate for yourselves, of course, and for those in your age group, but like you guys have such a bigger mindset, bigger dream, bigger vision, and that's why you guys are amazing leaders. And this is only the beginning, and I'm pretty sure you guys know that. But it is very cool to know that you have a lot of years left with the rule that you guys have put in place. I mean, a lot can happen, right, in the next handful of years, but it's so cool to see that you guys are already thinking beyond, the word that comes to mind is succession, right? Planning the longevity of your organization so it doesn't stop at you guys and it gets even bigger and better than what you guys might ever build, right?
I think it also sustains it for like long-term growth, or if it's not focused on a specific person or a couple of people, XYZ team, if it's focused on more on the mission than the actual people, then there's more room for that to spread, like, maybe 50 years down the line, for example. So it's like that sort of long-term thinking that really set us up to, like earlier on, clarify what our intentions were, what our goals were. Yeah.
That's so well said too, because I mean, I love talking about the why. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? And you guys are clear on your mission, which is your why. And I love how you just said that too. Like, it's not just um, surrounding just focused on you two, and you get older and suddenly like, okay, what are we doing now? With a strong mission and a strong vision and core values to add to that, I have no doubt you guys are going to have some longevity and some real impact. I mean, and you've already done so much, but you guys know that there's so much more to do.
Exactly.
That's so good. So I'm kind of wondering here because sometimes the older generation can look down on you because you're young, or you know there's some people that have worked really hard and have done the school thing and their profession. They put their time in the profession, and sometimes they don't give a time or a place to hear somebody who's younger. And I'm wondering, has that been a challenge for you guys to navigate? You guys almost in a matter of speaking have become a bridge between the young and older, and there's a lot of things that happen in between there. But has that been an obvious challenge or no?
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting you say that because actually what we've seen in our experiences, people actually want, at least what I've experienced is people actually want youth advocates, or they're really excited when they see youth advocates. And generally people are very receptive of the younger generation. And like we talked about when we were at the UN, or even like a week ago or 2 weeks ago when we were testifying for the bill, the chair actually recognized us and everyone started clapping. So that was actually such a enjoyable experience to be there. But I think in general, when people see youth advocates, in fact, it just makes them more inspired. That's at least what I've experienced. But yeah, Karthik, if you have anything to add, that's what came to my mind immediately.
Yeah, so like again, I think that there's a big distinction, especially in the way that like government officials and nonprofits treat youth advocates versus businesses, for example. And we got to experience that within like a gap of 1.5 weeks, like during our UN trip. So in New York, Summer of the Future, it's a bunch of nonprofit organizations like local governments, national governments. There's presidents, prime ministers, like everyone's there. The reception from them was very positive. They encouraged us to do our work, made a lot of contacts there. But in like a more of a business environment, like a private environment, like the corporate world, they don't really take that feedback from these youth advocates that seriously, and they're not as receptive because they're not looking for long-term change in a lot of cases, especially like smaller and medium-sized corporations who are focused on growth. But the bigger corporate organizations are becoming more receptive, but I still say they have a little bit more work. So I think the response it typically differs along those lines of whether you're a corporate organization or whether you're like a nonprofit or a public organization.
Wow. I'm glad that overall you guys have had a pretty good experience with that.
Yeah.
And that's great. And I mean, you guys are amazing leaders. So you guys are going to attract some great people around you. So I love that. I'm wondering too, as young leaders, is there like something that's been very rewarding that you've experienced so far that maybe kind of comes to mind? That could be anything, but is there something that kind of sticks out?
I don't know, Khartik, you want to answer that? I'm trying to
Yeah.
think.
So, one of the most rewarding things is seeing, this idea you thought of on the spot, or maybe within a couple of days of research, going into like a physical set of people who've traveled. Like, for example, we're going to have a summit on Rare Disease Day. It coincides with, I think, February 28th. So that's going to be like a virtual hybrid event. We've seen, over 700 people sign up. So that's like something that was really like amazing to us. And then also a lot of our team of the board is in the East Coast. So, we've been communicating virtually for the most of the part. But, when we went to Maryland, there was people from Pennsylvania, there's people from New Jersey, there's people from DC, from Virginia, from like a larger region. People like we met for the first time in person. So seeing that physical team really like helped us visualize the work we've done in building Viraj. So it was a really rewarding experience. Yeah.
That's cool. Wow. How about you, Viraj? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, I think that was I think Karthik basically explained it. Coming up with the whole idea as a whole, the organization, and honestly, just being able to, just being able to push the organization forward, and then also on, as we said, the thing on the 28th where we had so many attendees sign up. And also another thing is having a lot of youth advocates participate in senator meetings, and actually having we're actually going to, like, this week we're going to take a bunch of youth advocates to the Maryland General Assembly, and seeing how a lot of people actually supporting that as well. That's another thing that came to my mind is, but I think Karthik summed it up a lot.
Yeah, but I think like another thing that's really rewarding is we got to join a lot of organizations like the NGO Major Group at the UN, who've been allowing us to participate in giving side talks or speeches at these really large events with a lot of people. So it's really it's like really rewarding to see people taking our voice seriously as youth advocates, youth leaders.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's like one of the biggest highlights too. Yeah.
That's so cool. I failed to ask at the beginning of this episode, like, where do you both live?
So we live in Northern Virginia. It's right outside of DC. It's like a 20-minute drive.
Okay, cool. Oh,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. And then your advocates that you've been recruiting and that you have, are they from all over the place?
So they're like literally from every corner of the world. Like
Yeah.
we have like people in New Zealand. We partner with like a Maori empowerment organization. So there's a lot of people from the Maori community in New Zealand who have rare diseases. There's people in Dubai, Qatar, people in South Africa. There's a member of the delegation for one of the groups that works with the UN who's also working with the region.
And there's a lot of
Norway.
people in Switzerland as well. In
Yeah.
fact, actually, one of the um, like the CEO for RDI. I'm not sure if you know what RDI is. It's Rare Disease International. I don't know if
Okay.
you've heard of it. But the CEO of that, she actually lives in Switzerland, so a lot of the advocates are from that area as well. So
Yeah,
every
because
corner of the world,
they
essentially.
were they're originally interested in Rare Disease International, but then they also see that we're just doing a lot of similar work. So, some people they've been working with both actually.
Mm.
That's so cool. I'm curious, as you guys are sharing that, like you guys started an organization from scratch with this idea. So how did you guys build your network here? Did you guys get on the phone? I mean, you told us you've attended conferences and all that. Has that been kind of the approach here?
So, like one of the biggest things we learned earlier on, starting in like mid-August when we were trying to travel and get our word out, was calling people. Cold calling is really effective if you know like who you're cold calling and like why you're cold calling them, if you can articulate it correctly. And then something else that works out a lot is reaching out via LinkedIn, for example, because a lot of
Yeah.
people will showcase their work in nonprofits or in advocacy on LinkedIn.
Right.
So one of the people we met who helped us get to the UN was on LinkedIn. So we reached out to him there. So we found that cold calling in LinkedIn was more effective than emails or any other method of making these initial connections.
Right. That's so cool. And remind me here, how old is RareGen at this point?
So should be close to a year now.
You guys have done a lot in a year.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty cool. I mean, you guys got down to work.
Yes.
Um, and so we can look back right now what you've done in a year. I mean, there's some great things to come still. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
And I
Yeah.
think, yeah, go ahead.
no, I want to like my desire in having you guys come on to the podcast is that I strategically am releasing this episode right before a couple of days before Rare Disease Day, and so I'm just kind of wondering, putting you on the spot here. Um, there's some listeners that are going to be checking this episode out who may not understand rare disease, are not affected by it necessarily, but like we've said here already, like anybody can be an advocate. And so I'm just wondering, do you guys have a message or a word of encouragement for somebody who is not affected by a rare disease, but we know that we could use their support?
Yeah. So again, this ties into our core mission, which is connecting the people who don't have rare diseases to people who do. So if there's one thing we could say to these people, who don't have rare diseases, it's that, people around you who have rare diseases, there's only so much they can do. Like we're limited in numbers. We often have a lot of impairments, like physically, just in general. So we need your support to actually make a difference for like our demographic, um, especially because there's not a lot of people who focus on us as a priority group when it comes to equity, for example. So getting our word out there is like you joining Rare Gen or you participating in Rare Disease Day, whatever it may be, you doing that small action, essentially getting the message out for millions of people who have rare diseases, hundreds of thousands of people.
Mhm.
Yeah, and one thing I'd like to add is I know a little bit a while ago we talked about kind of the illusion where you think there's a lot of people advocating, but just like how that's more of an illusion, and in reality we need more advocates. The biggest message I'd give is there's not that many people that fight for this, and you don't have to experience it. You can always talk to someone who has experienced it, and then sort of advocate on their behalf or use stories in your advocacy. But the main thing is getting people to know that this exists, is spreading awareness about it, educating people about it. And anyone can do it. You don't have to have a rare disease, but essentially we just need that voice out there, and that's the biggest message I can give to that audience that doesn't have rare diseases.
Yeah, like another thing is that going back to the insurance example, because it was a pretty big example, is that like it takes one person to make a difference, right? There's the one guy, he went there, he advocated for everything he wants. So you could be that one person too, advocating on the other side for rare diseases. So it takes one person to make a really big difference, especially in rare diseases.
I love it. I love it. And I like the word you used too about like getting educated. I mean, if you don't know, fair enough, you don't know, but there's so much information out there, and we can get educated and learn more, and then figure out how we're going to contribute to this rare disease world. So good, guys. So I obviously wanted to advocate and I wanted to bring awareness to what you guys were doing, especially with rare disease around the corner. But I also love that you guys are leaders. And on this podcast, I want to encourage everybody to become better leaders. And you guys are an example that, hey, when you have a dream, when you have a vision, when you have an idea, you can eliminate excuses and you figure it out and go make it happen. And so I have a lot of respect for both of you and your team for what you're doing. But I am wondering, you guys have been learning a lot for sure in the past year, but even beyond that, is there a specific maybe leadership advice that has been given to you? Maybe each of you have one that has really kind of stuck out. It's really helping you, continue moving forward and winning.
Oh yeah, definitely. One thing that comes to my mind immediately is kind of, I guess, the advice where it's like, even if you think it's impossible, shoot your shot at it. And one big example that comes is the we talk about like the Rare Disease International Organization. So this is like the largest organization on for rare diseases internationally, and it's only it's pretty much just adults that are running it, and the CEO for the organization. She's someone who's extremely busy, and we were actually about to not email her because we were thinking, she's not going to check her email, or she wouldn't want to be participating with just like some organization she has no clue of or she hasn't heard of. But then we said, you don't actually know till you shoot your shot, and we sent her an email, and then we were actually able to partner with her, and now we're really good friends, and we built such a strong friendship just through that one email. So I think that's the first advice that comes to my mind. And I honestly think any person in a leadership role should take that advice to heart and just, shoot your shot at everything you think. You never really know till you try it. That's my past personal advice.
I love it. Thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. How about you, brother?
So on my end, I think that one of the biggest pieces of advice is, and this applies, for leaders for any type of organization, whether it's like a small startup, nonprofit, whatever it is, publicize what you're doing, get it out there so people know what you're doing and they can either take part in it or spread word of mouth about it. So, if it's a podcast, it's an interview, it's like a segment on the news, whatever it is, start getting your mission out there early, get your work out there early so people know what it is you're doing and what you've accomplished so far.
So good. Yeah, 100%. That's awesome. I appreciate you guys sharing that wisdom. That is definitely solid and will add value to a lot of people. So you guys are on the It Matters podcast, and I love to ask all my guests, like, what matters to you right now? Now, you've told me a lot, and then obviously, you're running an organization that's dear to your heart. But I'm wondering, in the season that you're in right now, what kind of sticks out? It might be something you shared already. It might be something completely off topic, but what matters to you right now?
So, especially for this month, like the Rare Disease Month, the main thing that sticks out to us right now is organizing a large group of people to advocate at the State House in Maryland, because we've been working with them over the past, like, since the start of 2025, since early January. We've been working in Maryland a lot. That's our state of interest. We're trying to influence the policy, like, for this first half of 2025.
Mm,
Our main goal is within this Rare Disease Month, when people are paying extra close attention to rare diseases, hopefully they are, is that we want to organize a large group of people to gather at the Maryland State House and bring attention to rare diseases. Because every day we go there, every week we go there at least once nowadays, and we
mm.
see groups and groups of people advocating for like gun violence, uh, environmental issues, for example. But I've never seen anything like that happen for rare diseases at the state legislature type of place. So we want to be the first ones to do that in Maryland, and we're trying to execute that at some point. around rare disease month. So, the end of this month, beginning of March, whenever it may be, we want to get that done.
Very cool. That's pretty awesome, guys. This has been a great conversation, but I want to make sure I open it up one more time here. Is there anything else that you want to say? Or maybe I didn't ask a specific question, but yeah, just want to, in case you want to say one last word. Is there anything else?
Yeah, I think before we end off, I just had one question for you, Walter. What are you gonna do on Rare Disease Day or Rare Disease Week, I should say? What is your plan?
Yeah, well, you guys know that I sit on the board for the PFIC network. And so we're always, well, so I live in Canada. And so I kind of get the privilege of seeing two different worlds because in the US, there's different policies, different things. And so one thing that we're actually working on here in Canada is we want to actually create an organization that represents PFIC here in Canada because we don't have one. And so I'm
Mm,
continually having conversations with other Canadians and seeing, not to recreate the wheel in the sense of what the PFIC network is doing, but we're trying to create a platform where we can advocate not only for rare disease, but in general with PFIC. I think there's room here in Canada with the policies, just like you guys are facing in the United States, right? Like we have our own challenges, and I'm
mm,
just becoming more and more aware of how that's needed. And so I want to use the Rare Disease Day as a platform to make sure that we're not only like posting on our social medias, but talking to people. And I think that sometimes we forget how easy it is to just make our voice known to other people. And I think I'm pretty vocal, but yet there's a lot of people in my circle that are not even aware that we have a child that has a rare disease, or at
mm.
least understand, what we're going through. So I appreciate that question, brother, because we have to continue to be mindful about it and intentional about it, or it doesn't get done.
Mm.
Exactly.
That's
Yes.
great. That's great to hear.
Yeah,
I hope everything goes well.
of course. No, I'm excited, and I know that with what you guys are doing over there, like we're all connected, and that's one of the beautiful things about advocating. Like if we get a breakthrough in an area, like everybody wins, and that's what it's all about. I am passionate about advocating for my son, but I'm passionate about advocating for everybody else because of what you guys are representing, and you so nicely and clearly demonstrated on this conversation that it does matter what we're doing, and when we come together, we become a bigger and stronger force.
Mm.
Hmm. This has been good, guys. Hey, so I want to make sure people connect with you guys. If anybody has questions or want to support you in some way, if somebody wanted to get in contact with you and connect with you, how would they do that?
So, you can call us 703-453-7409, or alternatively, you can contact us via email at karthik@reargen.org. So it's KHARTIK@reargen.org.
Awesome.
And that
And
information is on our website. Yeah, at the
cool.
bottom.
Well, Don, I was just going to say, I'm going to put that in the show notes too.
Mm.
And then our listeners have access to it. But I appreciate that you guys are making yourself available, and it's so easy to get in contact with you guys. This is awesome.
Yeah. Thank
Thanks,
you
man.
again for
Yep.
inviting us.
Ha! Thank you guys for being generous with your time and just sharing. I'm a big fan, guys. I love what you're doing, and I'm excited. I hope that it's an awesome rare disease day, but even beyond that, that the momentum you guys pick up this year as you're going into year two in your organization and move on. I want to wish you all the best, and I hope that you guys continue to impact in massive ways.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Of course, and for our listeners, I think now you know why I've invited these guys on. There's so much that we can learn from not only their tenacity, their work habit, their dreaming, their vision. They're doing some great work, so please check them out. Share, comment, Spread the word. We need more advocates. We need more people speaking up. And so I hope that this has impacted you. And because around here, we love to say it is a win-win when the leader leads well. And these two men are definitely leading well, and they're being an amazing example. So thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.